The reason most people stay broke has nothing to do with how hard they work, and everything to do with a system they were never taught to see. Let me tell you something that most financial content will never admit. Getting wealthy is not the hardest problem in personal finance. The genuinely difficult problem, the one that destroys families across generations, the one that no motivational speech addresses properly, is understanding why people cannot stop being poor. Those are two completely different conversations, and almost everyone is having the wrong one. People assume that poverty is a number, a low bank balance, a bad month, a run of misfortune. Fix the number, and you fix the person. That assumption is wrong, and the wrongness of it is exactly why most advice fails. Poverty is not a number. Poverty is a mechanism. It is a self-reinforcing loop with its own internal logic, its own gravitational pull, and its own immune system that fights off attempts to escape it. Until you understand the mechanism, you are not solving the problem. You are just pushing against it blindly and exhausting yourself. I want to call this the income lock, and I want to show you exactly how it works. Consider what it takes to launch a satellite into stable orbit. It is not simply a matter of pointing upward and firing the engines. The satellite has to reach a precise threshold of speed, a figure below which gravity simply overwhelms the forward motion and pulls the object back down, regardless of how much energy was spent getting it there. Reach 98% of that threshold, and the result is not 98% of the way to orbit. The result is a crash. Every unit of fuel burned, every second of thrust, erased by the final failure to cross the line. This is the daily reality for millions of working people. You pick up extra shifts, you stop eating out, you build a small cushion, you feel yourself rising, and then something goes wrong. Because something always goes wrong when your margin is zero. A medical bill, a car breakdown, an unexpected increase in rent. The cushion evaporates in days. You do not land where you started. You land below it. Because now you are also carrying the weight of failed effort, depleted energy, and the quiet, corrosive belief that trying harder may simply not be enough. This is not a personal failure. This is the mathematics of the income lock in action. And the mechanism is reinforced from outside as well as from within. The system does not passively observe your struggle. It profits from it. It builds fees, penalties, and interest structures specifically around the behavior of people with no financial margin. The less you have, the more the system charges you for existing. We will get into exactly how this works. In this video, we are breaking down 5 specific components of the income lock. By the end, you will have a complete map of why the trap holds and what specific actions break each chain. Stay until the 5th mechanism, because that one determines the mathematical direction of your entire financial future, and most people get it completely backwards. Let us go. Mechanism 1. The cognitive cost of scarcity. Here is a question most people have never been asked. What if the most damaging consequence of financial stress is not the money you lose, but the thinking capacity you lose along with it? In 2013, researchers from Princeton University and Harvard University published findings from a series of studies examining cognitive performance under financial pressure. The results were significant. When individuals were mentally occupied by financial worries, actively concerned about how to handle bills, debt, or shortfalls, their measurable performance on cognitive tasks dropped substantially. The researchers described this as a tax on mental bandwidth. The mind was so occupied with managing immediate financial threat that it had significantly less capacity available for planning, reasoning, and evaluating future-oriented decisions. Think about what that actually means. When you are behind on bills, you are not just stressed. You are cognitively impaired. The mental resources you need to make smart, long-term choices, the kind of thinking that would help you plan a better financial path, are being consumed in real time by the anxiety of today's crisis. And then the circular trap kicks in. Because you are operating with reduced cognitive capacity, you make decisions that look irrational from a distance, but are completely rational from within the situation. You take the short-term, high-interest loan because you need cash before the late fee hits. You buy the cheaper, lower-quality item because you cannot afford the upfront cost of the better one, even though the better one would ultimately cost you far less. You skip the preventive care because you cannot afford the appointment, and then pay 3 times as much for the emergency treatment later. This is what economists describe as the embedded premium of poverty. You are paying more for everything, not because you are making poor choices, because your choices are constrained in ways that always lead to higher total costs. Let me make this concrete with a straightforward example. A person with a comfortable financial cushion can purchase household goods in bulk quantities, dramatically reducing the per-unit cost. A person with no cushion purchases small quantities because that is all they can afford this week. Same product, higher effective price. Every single purchase, every single week. Multiply this across groceries, clothing, appliances, and healthcare, and the difference over a decade becomes staggering. Quality has an upfront cost. Better boots, better tires, better preventive medical care, better food. All of these require more money today to save significantly more money over time. But when today's money is already spoken for, you cannot access the long-term savings. The system charges you repeatedly for not being able to afford the efficient option. So what is the practical exit from this first mechanism? You need what I would call a financial circuit breaker. A reserved pool of money, it does not need to be large, $500, even $300, held in a separate account, untouched, reserved only for genuine emergencies. This is not investment capital. This is not a savings milestone. This is cognitive insurance. When you have a buffer, the car breaking down is a problem you handle with money. Without a buffer, the car breaking down is the first domino in a sequence. Overdraft fee, late payment on something else, penalty interest, additional loan to cover the gap. The buffer stops the cascade before it starts. Building this buffer requires a defined period of radical simplicity, cutting everything that is not essential. It is uncomfortable and it is temporary, but it is not optional. It is the foundation beneath every other step. You cannot build elevation when you are still sinking. Mechanism 2. The consumption relief loop. Now I want to address something that gets misunderstood constantly, often deliberately, by people who find it convenient to moralize about the spending habits of people who are struggling. Why does someone with credit card debt buy a new outfit? Why does a person behind on utilities go out for dinner on Friday? Why does someone who cannot afford next month's rent still own an expensive phone? Before you reach for the standard answer, bad decisions, poor discipline, lack of foresight, I want to give you the biological answer, because the biological answer is the accurate one. Sustained financial stress maintains elevated levels of cortisol in the body. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone. At high chronic levels, it produces a state of persistent psychological discomfort, a low-grade but constant feeling of threat, of smallness, of being trapped. Your nervous system is running in crisis mode, not occasionally, continuously. Your brain, operating in this state, begins searching for relief, any source of relief, because relief is not a luxury, it is a biological need. And when you walk into a store, browse online and make a purchase, your brain releases dopamine, a genuine neurochemical reward signal. For a short window, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, the pressure lifts, the cortisol dips. You feel a moment of agency, of pleasure, of being someone who can have something they want. You feel briefly like you matter. This is not impulsivity. This is self-medication. And the consumer economy is specifically designed to exploit this mechanism at industrial scale. Every advertisement, every sale notification, every strategically timed promotional offer is engineered to reach people when their cortisol is highest, during the commute, after a hard day, when scrolling late at night, and trigger the purchase reflex. The financial pain drives the spending that deepens the financial pain. The loop tightens. The debt is permanent, but the relief lasts 20 minutes. And the system built this math on purpose. The wealthy operate on a fundamentally different relationship with money, not because they are more disciplined or virtuous, but because money has never needed to function as their emotional medicine. When you are not in sustained pain, you can use money instrumentally. You ask, does this purchase grow my position or shrink it? When you are in sustained pain, that question is unreachable. The only operative question is, can this relieve me right now? This is the core difference between viewing money as pleasure and viewing money as leverage over future circumstances. An asset generates value without requiring additional input of your time. A stake in a growing company, a skill that attracts higher-paying work, a property that produces rental income. A liability, by contrast, drains value from you. It requires ongoing maintenance, depreciates, or simply ceases to produce after the initial dopamine has faded. Most people caught in the income lock are heavily weighted toward liabilities that mimic the appearance of wealth. The vehicle that signals status but costs $200 a month to operate. The wardrobe that reads as successful but holds zero resale value. The subscriptions, the gadgets, the experiences purchased on credit. They look prosperous. Their accounts tell a different story. How do you interrupt this loop? You have to intentionally break the reward circuit. This means a defined behavioral reset period. Call it a consumption pause. Not permanent austerity, a temporary strategic removal of the spending triggers that have been conditioning your brain to seek relief through purchasing. Cancel the non-essential subscriptions. Remove the shopping apps. Stop entering stores without a specific list. Remove the purchase as reward association from your daily routine. During this period, you redirect the neurological reward toward a different signal, the growth of your savings balance. Check it daily. Let the upward movement become the satisfying moment. You are literally reprogramming the dopamine source, from money going out to money accumulating. The first few weeks are the hardest. After that, the rewiring begins to take hold and the dynamic inverts. Watching your balance grow starts to feel better than any purchase. Mechanism 3. The time-sealing income model. The third mechanism is structural. It is embedded in the way most people are taught to think about earning, and the flaw in it is mathematical and final. The model is simple. Time equals money. Want more money? Work more hours. Take the second job. Add the weekend shift. The equation feels intuitive because it is direct and immediate. Work, get paid. Work more, get paid more. But the flaw is absolute. Time is finite. You have 24 hours in a day. Subtract sleep, basic self-maintenance, and any time you want with the people in your life, and your available working hours are capped, perhaps 8, perhaps 10, perhaps 12 at maximum. That ceiling does not move. No matter how willing you are to sacrifice, you cannot push past it. Your income, therefore, has a hard mathematical ceiling. Your costs, however, are not capped. Inflation alone guarantees that your expenses grow year over year in ways your wage does not match in real time. The economic term for this is wage stickiness. Wages adjust to inflation slowly after significant delay, and almost always by less than the actual price increase. Meanwhile, the price of housing, groceries, fuel, and healthcare continues its upward trajectory regardless of what your employer decides about your annual review. The result is that working harder within a purely time-for-income model without any other strategy produces diminishing real returns. You sacrifice your health. You miss important moments with your family. You accumulate fatigue. And at the end of the year, your actual purchasing power may have declined anyway. You cannot win a rigged race by running faster. You have to change the race. The shift is from selling time to selling a distinctive outcome, from being a replaceable input in someone else's system to being a difficult-to-replicate solution. How do you make that shift practically? You build what is sometimes called a stacked capability set. The idea is this. Rather than spending years trying to reach the top 1% of a single crowded professional field, which takes enormous time and money and may still leave you competing against hundreds of thousands of equally qualified people, you build a combination of 2 or 3 genuinely useful skills that rarely appear together in one person. A warehouse operations worker who learns to write clear data reports is not competing against other warehouse workers. They are competing in a much smaller field. A customer-facing support professional who develops copywriting skills is not just a service agent. They become someone who can translate customer insight into persuasive content,
a combination that creates distinctive value in almost any organization. Rare combinations generate market premiums. The labor market does not pay for effort. It does not pay for intention. It pays for solutions it cannot easily source elsewhere. The more replaceable you are, the less leverage you have in any negotiation about compensation. The more distinctive your combination, the more the market has to come toward you. Build this skill stack during the time you reclaim from your consumption pause. Free and low-cost educational resources have never been more accessible. Libraries, open courseware platforms, long-form tutorials, community programs.
The barrier to learning a second marketable skill is now almost entirely motivational, not financial. When your income becomes partially decoupled from your physical hours, you have begun to break the ceiling. That is the entry point of real economic mobility. Mechanism 4. The invisible ceiling of your environment. This fourth mechanism is the one people resist examining most because it involves the people they care about. Your environment is not neutral. It has a direction. The conversations you participate in daily, the expectations held by the people closest to you, the assumptions embedded in your community about what is normal and what is possible, all of these exert constant, mostly invisible pressure on what you believe is achievable for someone like you. Research in behavioral science consistently demonstrates that human beings model the behavior, beliefs, and expectations of their immediate social group. This is not a weakness. It is one of the most powerful mechanisms of social cohesion in our species. For most of human history, aligning with your group's norms was essential for survival and belonging. But in the context of financial mobility, this mechanism can lock you into the ceiling your group has accepted. If every person in your immediate environment treats financial struggle as a permanent condition rather than a solvable problem, that framing quietly becomes yours. If ambition is regarded as presumption or arrogance within your social circle, you will unconsciously suppress it to maintain the relationships that make your life feel stable and familiar. If the dominant narrative around you is that the system is fixed and individual effort is pointless, that story will eventually become the story you tell yourself. And when you begin to change, when you start the buffer building process, when you begin developing new skills, when your habits shift in observable ways, the people around you may not celebrate it. The change in you can feel like an implicit criticism of their stillness. It can make your proximity uncomfortable. Some will question your choices. Some will discourage you. This is not malice. It is the natural friction of one person moving in a different direction inside a group that has stopped expecting movement. You have to name this clearly so that you can navigate it without losing either your progress or your compassion for the people involved. The practical response is not to abandon your relationships. It is to deliberately curate your mental environment alongside the relational one. Choose whose thinking you allow to run at scale in your mind. Books are one of the most underutilized tools in this context. A detailed account of how someone built something significant from a position of genuine constraint is not just inspiration. It is a functional data set. It shows you a specific model, specific decisions, specific inflection points. You are not borrowing their circumstances. You are borrowing their framework for evaluating options. You become the average of the voices you let run on repeat in your mind. So choose those voices deliberately. Podcasts, long-form interviews, written biographies of people who have navigated from limited beginnings to expanded outcomes,
These represent a community of thinking that you can actively choose. You are not pretending to have personal relationships with these people. You are choosing to let their reasoning patterns, their questions, their long-term orientation be the ones that shape how you evaluate your situation. Your address does not determine your ceiling, but your default environment will quietly define it if you allow it to run unmanaged. The override requires active, daily effort. It is not a one-time decision. It is a practice. Mechanism 5. Which direction is compounding working for you? This final mechanism is the most mathematically decisive of all 5, and most people are on the wrong side of it without realizing it. Compound growth is one of the most counterintuitive forces in all of personal finance. In the early stages, it produces results so small they appear meaningless. A few dollars earned on a modest balance, a fractional percentage return. Nothing that feels significant. But the mechanism is exponential, not linear. In the later stages, the same percentage applied to a much larger base produces numbers that seem disproportionate to the effort. The engine accelerates as it runs. Here is the question that determines your financial trajectory more than any other single factor. Are you the person paying compound interest, or are you the person earning it? These two positions are mathematical mirrors of each other. High-interest consumer debt, credit cards, payday loans, certain car financing arrangements, compounds against you. Every day you carry that balance, its cost grows automatically. You do not have to spend another dollar for your financial position to worsen. The math does it for you while you sleep. You wake up each morning already slightly further behind than you were the night before. On the other side of this equation, money placed in productive assets compounds for you. A diversified stake in the broad market, real estate that produces rental income, a business equity position. These assets generate returns that are reinvested to generate larger returns. Every day, the balance grows without requiring additional hours of your labor. The person on this side of the equation wakes up each morning already slightly wealthier than the night before, regardless of what they did that day. The psychological difference between these two positions is not trivial. One group wakes up with momentum working for them. The other wakes up already losing ground. The resulting difference in long-term perspective, decision-making, and risk tolerance is enormous, and it compounds just as surely as the money does. Exiting this mechanism follows 3 sequential stages. Stage 1. Close the drain. Before you attempt to build anything, you must eliminate the mechanisms that are actively pulling you backward. High-interest debt is a compound engine running in reverse at rates that can reach 20, 25, or 30% annually. No investment available to an ordinary person reliably outperforms that rate of loss. Eliminating this debt is not a financial preference. It is a mathematical prerequisite. Everything else waits until the drain is sealed. Stage 2. Start the accumulation. Once the drain is eliminated, begin feeding a productive asset, consistently, with whatever amount is available, without waiting for a more convenient moment or a larger sum. $10 a day, 15, whatever the budget allows after essentials. The point is not the size of the initial contribution. The point is starting the engine. Regular, consistent investment in a broadly diversified, low-cost instrument begins the compounding process. The machine needs time more than it needs size, and the only way to give it time is to start.
Stage 3. Reach the threshold. This is the specific point at which your accumulated assets generate enough passive income to cover your essential living costs. This is the actual, functional definition of financial independence. Not a number in a magazine, not a lifestyle level, a threshold. The moment passive income covers your baseline expenses, your time is no longer a commodity you are forced to sell to survive. You have broken the orbital pull. You have options. The timeline varies significantly depending on starting position, income level, and rate of accumulation. For some people, it takes 7 years. For others, it may take 25. But the mathematics works with absolute certainty if the process is not interrupted. That is the fundamental point of compounding. Given time and consistency, the outcome is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of arithmetic. Conclusion. The map has always existed. Let us bring all 5 mechanisms together. The cognitive cost of scarcity consumes the mental bandwidth you need to plan forward. The consumption relief loop converts your biological pain into recurring financial cost. The time-ceiling income model caps your earning at your physical limit. Environmental gravity silently defines the ceiling of your ambition. And the compounding equation determines whether time is working for you or against you, in a direction that grows more pronounced every single year. None of these are character flaws. Not one of them is a permanent condition. Each has a specific, actionable response. The buffer breaks the scarcity spiral. The consumption pause resets the reward loop. The skill stack breaks the income ceiling. Environmental curation overrides the social default, and consistent asset accumulation crosses you to the earning side of compound growth. But here is the critical point. The sequence matters. The buffer comes first, because without it, everything else collapses under the first emergency. The behavioral reset comes second, because it generates the capital and the mental space for what follows. The skill development comes third, because you need the freed hours to do it. The environmental curation runs continuously throughout. And the asset accumulation begins the moment the drain is sealed and not a moment later. Skip any stage and the foundation is incomplete. Follow the sequence, and the physics begin to work in your favor instead of against you. The exit from the income lock has always existed. The mechanism has always been understood by the people who escaped it. The reason it is not common knowledge is not a mystery. Systems that profit from your constraint do not fund the curriculum that explains how to leave. You now have the map. What you do with it is the only question that remains. If this framework shifted how you see this problem, if even one of these 5 mechanisms clicked in a way that nothing else has, hit that like button right now. It is a small action for you, and it meaningfully affects how many people this content reaches. This is Law Brief USA. And our purpose here is to give you frameworks that actually function, not just motivation that fades by Tuesday. Thank you for being here. Now, start Stage 1. Thanks for watching my video.